Bienvenue au Pont pour la Mission.
Welcome to Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenido al Puente a Misión.
欢迎，这是 Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenue na Pont pour Mission.
Tulo mubanasu da fakukaso ado dapa.
We are so glad you found us. I am Minister Nicole Cox, Associate to Short-Term Mission at International Ministries.
I am Reverend Sandra Dorsonville, Director of Short-Term Mission at International Ministries. We are the creative minds behind this podcast. In this second season, you will be invited to listen to new voices who are themselves passionate about God's mission and how we respond to God's call to be hands and feet of Christ, not only in our neighborhoods, but thousands of miles away from the comfort of what seems familiar. Several special assistants to the Short-Term Mission Office, skilled team leaders, will have conversations with guests living in the U.S. and abroad. We invite you to stay open to how their stories may intersect with your story. Let the movement of the Holy Spirit permeate your hearts.
You'll soon discover how God equips all of us for the task we are called to, and you will recognize that we don't do this discernment process alone. Let these God moments create beautiful bridges for ministry. We live in hope and love, which neither can be silenced nor ignored. Welcome to Bridges for Mission. We're glad you found us.
Everyone. My name is Lynn Punnett, and I am pleased to be here today. I'm a special assistant with short-term missions, and I work in the region, the American Baptist Church's region of Michigan, and I have the pleasure of helping any of our 140 churches here in Michigan have short-term mission trip experiences, and it's a delight today to have my really good friend, Josie Howard Wine, have a conversation with me about the experiences that we've had together and let her share some of her personal experiences. Josie is from one of our Michigan churches. She is from Second Missionary Baptist Church in Battle Creek. Is that right, Josie?
That's correct.
Okay. And so thank you for being here. I'm really thrilled. It's my first podcast. I'm super excited. What about you?
My first, but I'm glad you invited me.
Me too. Hey, I wondered if first you might just tell briefly about young experiences, perhaps with missionaries. And where did you grow up? Are you from Michigan?
No. I am from Mississippi, Columbus, Mississippi. That's Northeast Mississippi.
Okay. And did you have any experiences with missionaries growing up there? I know your family was very active in church. It was a big part of your life.
Yes, although my family was very active in our Baptist church, my next door neighbor was from a Pentecostal church, and they did a lot of missionary work. So being next door neighbors, we got to, have input on what they would do. And then my mom would kind of pitch in for them, with them. So I got to see a lot with her.
Okay. Well, had you made short-term missionary trips before our trip to Haiti together, which you can remind me maybe was 2012, the first time you went with our team?
Correct.
Had you had any experiences before that?
Not as missionary, but I did serve as a volunteer for the Red Cross. I did 5 disasters with the Red Cross. And so that was my turn on right there, because it is very, very similar to what we do when I'm in Haiti.
Okay, and those would be, I'm guessing I'm a former Red Crosser, so those would be 2 to 3 week stints that you would go out with disaster services?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, similar to a mission experience for sure. Okay, well, How did you hear about the first opportunity to go with the Michigan Servants for Christ team back in 2012? How'd you hear about that?
Well, my husband and I attended the Michigan regional meeting, and there was conversation about the mission trips. And as I was leaving out, I saw this beautiful display displaying about Haiti and people that had gone on mission trips. And I was real interested in that because that reminded me of my Red Cross. And I gathered the information, brought it home, read it, and was real interested in it. And so I kind of had my husband to kind of, bag me in the back door.
Well, how many trips have you made now?
I think I've been there since 2012. We didn't go last year, so we're looking at 7 maybe.
Yeah, okay. And I guess why don't you take a moment and share, without my asking anything specific, just share about your experiences on those trips.
Well, actually, at the first time I went, I didn't know exactly what to expect, although the comparison to the Red Cross was similar. But as I decided to go, I think I kind of thought, now, okay, I got to have a focus, okay, and I got to be purpose-driven. And my purpose was to go because my heart was saying to me to go and be able to use my hands to help in any area that I could. And I decided to go. I was invited to go. And I think my first comfort zone was I grew. When I met the group and the people that were going along, it was almost like we were just meant to be. Everybody was, very friendly and helpful with each other. And it was almost like we had known each other for years and years. So that really helped to calm me down. And then when we arrived, we had so many fun experiences that I will never forget. And it just kind of set me off. And so I've been wanting to go ever since.
Mm-hmm. And just briefly, what did we do that first year? What was the project?
Other than pushing the truck. What did we do that first year? That very first year, we built a Hubble house.
Yeah.
And
a house out of rubble.
Rubble house, okay. And it was fun because we had to go up a hill. The house sat on a hill. And we had to beat up the rocks and pass them up by pails, and we'd made handles with our clothes racks, and we had I guess you would like a team, and we were spaced out going up the hill, and we would pass the pail up, and sometimes we'd have to slow the pail down because it was too much in there. Not too much, gotta lighten it. So it was just quite an experience. To be able to say that I built a house.
Absolutely. Out of the concrete rubble that was all over Haiti from the earthquake and homes collapsing. So we were cleaning up at the same time that we were providing a home. Now, after that, we returned to the north of Haiti, though. We have missionaries up there. And they recommended that maybe we begin working with folks up in the north. And so our host, of course, was and continues to be Reverend Dr. Joseph Voltaire and his wife. And so tell me about your experience in the north.
Okay, the first one we went up, we worked at the Home for the Widows. Yes. And we were building stairs and painting and helping to construct a 2-level apartment-like complex for them. And so we spent that week working in that area. And since going back other times, we've become a little bit more spread out because we would always still go back and work with the widows. We did the garden, we pulled up flowers and we planted flowers for them. We painted. And it's just been a kind of an ongoing thing. And each year we would do a little bit more. we branch out a little bit more. We went to the school at one point and we worked at the school. We went out to their campground. We worked out there. We painted the bathroom. We painted the chapel. And it has just been kind of an ongoing thing because each time we go, there's always a little bit more to do. And our focus kind of changed too. And one year we did the fresh water, and I got to go out a couple of days with the water team to install the water filters for families. And that was exciting.
Yeah. So with that in mind, like going out into the villages or those really remote areas installing clean water filters, it's different than working in the city for sure. But I don't know, let's take a minute and talk to me about, where you've really witnessed God. Where have you seen him or experienced that yourself?
Actually, when I meet the people, there is an automatic connection where this is God putting us together. And it's just that, we all somehow seem to kind of gel together and we develop the kind of relationship that it's family. It's family, and it's by God's will that we come together and we do what we do. And that's my heart. That's my heart. That's where my heart comes in, because I know that this is the will of God, that we come together.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the way our churches in Michigan are more, I believe, more like a family now too, as a result of these experiences coming together? What do you think the impact has been here in Michigan?
Well, I think it has brought a lot of us together from the north, the east, the south, and the west side of Michigan, where we've developed relationships with the people, that we've gone with, which has brought us together. Also, it has given our congregations an opportunity to see how we come together and how we work together, which has also helped us to increase our volunteers that will go over each year, because people hear about it, they're real curious, and they want to hear and they want to see. And it also gives you an opportunity, not only with your church family, but with your community family, because I've had an opportunity to do some speaking for non-congregational community groups where I've taken in pictures and they've asked questions. And so it gives them an opportunity. And a lot of times those people aren't even connected with the church, but it gives them an opportunity to see actually what our churches are doing. Because most people think you go to church on Sunday morning and that's it, And when we say we're missionaries, it gives them an opportunity to see just how far out we reach.
Absolutely. Thank you. What's maybe something that's particularly meaningful an experience or memorable from your time in Haiti? Any particular thing jump out?
So many things. One is I've had an opportunity to meet a Josie. My name is Josie, and I've met a Josie, and she just anticipates us coming every year. And when we arrive, she comes and she wants to know, where is Josie? Where is Josie? And so that's one thing. Somehow, I don't know how, but I've kind of developed the name Mom. They call me Mom. And so I think because I kind of treat the kids as a mother, because I think that was the teacher in me to, embrace kids. And I'm Mom to everybody, okay? And again, and of course, I've developed a relationship with the pastor's wife, because me being a pastor's wife myself, it has kind of drawn us closer together too. And a lot of times when we go out and they accompany us, usually she and I are together.
Yes. Yeah. That common thing is really important. Not just American pastors' wives getting together, right? It doesn't matter. Your pastors' wives, and there are things that only pastors' wives experience. So That's awesome. If someone expressed interest, and I know they have, and I know you've encouraged people, but if someone was apprehensive or maybe expressing fear, what would you say, Josie, to someone who was considering it but maybe apprehensive?
Well, in the past, what I've always said, and people often come up and say, I want to go, I want to go. And the first thing I say to them is that you need to spend some time in prayer. Spend some time in prayer with it to see if this is directly where God wants you to go. Not that because you've heard of what we do, you've seen some of the pictures and the fun that we have too with our mission work, but to just know if this is really what God is saying to you that you need to do. So I always say, spend some time in prayer, spend some time in prayer. Because the one thing that people do, people sometimes think that you're going for fun. Oh, you get away, it's a vacation. No, we work. That's the intent, to go and use our hands. That's why I say first is my heart and then my hands. Because when we go, we know that we're going to help them. Not only to share the love and the connection, but to help them with our hands in any way we can to help make life better for them.
How did you feel in terms of being prepared? You know, how does someone, obviously prayer, right? This is the most important thing. But, you know, we come together as a team. There are certain things we do to prepare to go. Did you feel prepared, well prepared? What advice might you give someone?
Well, after the prayer and you feel that God is really leading you to this is where you really need to go, I think when you come together with the team, because Lynn, you always bring us together, and so that we get to meet the people that we're going with. For me, it has always been that it was like an automatic connection, that we kind of came together as a group, because everybody was anticipating the trip, but they were also understanding that this is going to be something that's a little different than going to Hollywood for family vacation. You know, even though you're going to you're increasing your family member on our team, but you're also going to have family members in Haiti once you arrive.
And so for those listening who might not realize, in Michigan, every year we take a team and 1 or 2 or 3 people are invited from any of our churches across Michigan. So this team that comes together, they don't know each other. And there are some regulars that come now year after year, and they're that core group, but each time there are new people coming and going. And so it's this beautiful mix that happens. But that preparation, just remembering that our goal when we go, yes, is to use our hands and to serve, but we really seek to build up the local church and the local missionaries. This is part of our training, and I know Josie will agree that we go down there, and it's easy to think we're a hero and build ourselves up. That is not what this is about. In fact, we don't, as individuals, give a single dollar to anyone, because if a dollar is to be given away, our missionaries have the best idea. They know how to best use that dollar, and they'll honor any requests that we have, of course, but we seek to build up the local church, and that is really important to me. Do you have any reflection on that, Josie?
Yeah, I think once you get there, okay, and it may be in your mind that once I get there, I'm going to help them, I'll give them this and I'll give them that. But before you leave, you get a very good orientation on what the purpose is. And the purpose is not for you to go as an individual to help, to give, but it's for us to go as a team, and we're going to what? Help the local church. Now, there may be opportunities where people may ask for certain things, but you have to keep in mind that, one, this is a team, and we have to do what our focus is, and we have to do what the team is expected to do, and that is to work with the local church.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts you wanted to share? I've asked some questions, but you might have had some things that you wanted to share today.
Well, the one thing that I would share is that going to Haiti these years has been a blessing for me. It's been a blessing for me. And it has given me an opportunity to look at sometimes things that we have and things that we take for granted, you know, and that we don't realize, because we just think, well, because it's here and it's accessible, I'm okay. But you know, when you look at people that are without, okay, that gives you an opportunity to look at what you do have and be more grateful and more thankful to God for what you have. And then it also gives you an opportunity to share. You want to share because when you see the honesty of those people and you see the desires that they have and how whatever you do for them, it is very, very appreciative. They are very appreciative to what we do for them. And they don't forget you once you do something for them, not financially, but through our service with our hands and building. It gives them an opportunity to give back to us. And they give back to us by the love that they share with us, the relationships that we develop, and also the pride that they take in what we do when we're there.
Thank you. That's a beautiful way to close out our session, Josie. It's just so good to be with you today. I thank you so much. I love you.
Love you too. Love you too. And so glad you invited me.
Yes, in 2021 in the fall, we are planning a trip. God willing, we'll be able to make a team come together and return to Haiti. That's what we're working towards. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for joining us today. If you are interested in learning more about short-term mission and international ministries, you can find us at internationalministries.org.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bridges for Mission. We are so glad you found us. Till next time.
Bienvenue au Pont pour la Mission.
Welcome to Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenido al Puente a Misión.
欢迎，这是 Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenue na Pont pour Mission.
Dulo mubana su da fakukaso ado dapa.
We are so glad you found us. I am Minister Nicole Cox, Associate to Short-Term Mission at International Ministries.
I am Reverend Sandra Dorsonville, Director of Short-Term Mission at International Ministries. We are the creative minds behind this podcast. In this second season, you will be invited to listen to new voices who are themselves passionate about God's mission and how we respond to God's call to be hands and feet of Christ, not only in our neighborhoods, but thousands of miles away from the comfort of what seems familiar. Several special assistants to the Short-Term Mission Office, skilled team leaders, will have conversations with guests living in the U.S. and abroad. We invite you to stay open to how their stories may intersect with your story. Let the movement of the Holy Spirit permeate your hearts.
You'll soon discover how God equips all of us for the task we are called to, and you will recognize that we don't do this discernment process alone. Let these God moments create beautiful bridges for ministry. We live in hope and love, which neither can be silenced nor ignored. Welcome to Bridges for Mission. We're glad you found us.
Super pleased to be here on this beautiful Michigan fall day. It's a stunning time of year to be here in our state. My name is Lynn Punnett, and I'm a member of First Baptist Church in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I also play a role with our region. I am a consultant. We have about 140 churches in Michigan, and I help any and all of them make connections to short-term mission experiences. And I also have, in a volunteer capacity, a role with International Ministries as a special assistant, and I play a liaison role between Michigan and our short-term mission team. So it's a pleasure to be here today, and I want to welcome Mark Gutierrez, a friend of mine, and ask him to introduce himself if he would.
Thank you, Lynn. Nice to be here. So yeah, I'm Mark Gutierrez. Right now I'm a medical student at University of Michigan. I lived in the U.S. till I was 8 years old, and then I moved with my family to Durban, South Africa. My parents, Rick and Anita Gutierrez, are medical missionaries out there. And so, yeah, I lived there from third grade till the end of high school, and got to participate in some of the work that they were doing there. I guess, should I speak a little bit about their mission now?
Go ahead, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so my parents, they were family doctors in the U.S., and over in South Africa, they do medical missionary work. So their work sort of involves a couple different parts. They train people to do health screening for diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, HIV and AIDS, which are, of course, a huge problem in South Africa. And they also teach people how to eat healthy foods, how to grow their own vegetables, how to raise chickens. And then also they make educational videos, which is something I've been involved in a little bit more and more recently. And I guess, so also part of their work is in training these health screeners. They're also essentially starting small Bible study groups in rural villages where there aren't really churches. And so these are centered around health, but, my parents and I, of course, believe health is very holistic. So it involves Bible study and, learning about God and about Jesus through that, but kind of using health as a bridge to all of that.
Wonderful. So were you actively involved in that with them?
Yeah, so especially, I'd say kind of from the 10th grade on, I got to do health screening with my parents, which was a really wonderful experience for me. As someone interested in going into medicine, it was just a great experience for that, to see kind of the very broad role that a doctor can have, not just in the clinic, but, out there with people in rural areas. So yeah, I did screening for diabetes, for peripheral artery disease, alongside my parents. And I also was able to teach local people how to do that as well, which was just a wonderful experience for me. I think that was kind of my first role in getting to take care of patients, and a really wonderful experience for me.
Yeah. And I'm going to assume that's part of what led you to know that you wanted to go to medical school yourself. And maybe why did you go to U of M? Let's just do a Go Blue plug.
Yeah, well, hey, I love Michigan. My parents both went to undergrad here. And so it was really kind of the natural choice for me. And my dad went to medical school here as well. And really, my family was based in Michigan before they moved to South Africa. So it was, in fact, the only place I applied for undergrad. And I'm very happy that I came back here for undergrad. But I guess, Lynn, kind of going back to your question a little bit, the taking care of patients and the interest in medicine, I remember very clearly, so when you do this peripheral artery disease screening, one of the things you have to do is look at the arteries down in the leg, the brachial arteries. And to do that, you often will have to take people's socks off. And so I remember I was with my dad, and we were doing health screening in this kind of alley next to this mall that was in this sort of poor area. And there was this homeless man who came, and I had to take off his socks to get at the brachial artery. And I remember his socks were pretty smelly. They were kind of yellowed. He probably didn't have good access to like a laundromat and things like that. And I was a little put off by that. But then, I also thought to myself, like, gosh, well, this is a child of God, and I could very well be in his shoes as well. And, I was a little actually taken aback at my own response to it. And I think that was a big part of like thinking like, well, we're called to serve people like whoever they are. We're called to love them and care for them and do the best we can for them. Experiences like that you have taking care of people, there's really no other way to have them than to be out there seeing people like that, caring for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't ask before recording this morning, but what are your plans going forward? Okay, so you're seeking your residency. How long would you be in residency? And then you and your wife, what are your plans going forward?
Yeah, well, I think so. Residency is 3 years long. So, it's even kind of unclear where I will end up for residency. But after that, I think that likely Laurel and I will be practicing in the U.S. It's really, it's something that I've thought a good bit about, like becoming a missionary like my parents. And I think that one thing in talking to my parents about this a lot is that it's so important to feel the call from God, to go out there and serve people. And I think, there's many people in the U.S. that we can serve as well. But I think on the other hand, for my parents, one of the things they really expressed to me was that, wow, when they finished residency, they felt like very comfortable in their jobs and they loved doing it, but they really felt like God was calling them to something else. And they really only had that after they were done with their residency training. So I think for me, the challenge is to not get complacent in like where I am and a nice job and a nice salary and be listening for that call, from God. I think so. It's kind of, my plans are unclear right now. We'll see where God takes me. But yeah, that's definitely, a challenge discerning that.
Well, I think you're blessed that you have an amazing support system here in Michigan with your extended family and the support of your parents in whatever you choose to do. And you will stay focused on God. I know that. And so you're going to know. You're going to know what you're supposed to do. Maybe when it's a time to make a change after you've even practiced for a while in the U.S. Well, it's going to be super exciting to follow you and just see what God has in plan for you. So yeah, I wanted to go back if I could and just ask a little bit. I'm interested to know about the geography, perhaps, of where Durban is in South Africa, what that terrain is like, what the environment is like there, and what'd you grow up in?
Certainly. So, South Africa, Durban in South Africa is a very beautiful place to be. I'd say, to compare it to an American example, it's a lot like Florida. You're on the coast. The Indian Ocean is very warm and nice, so it's pretty humid. The summers get very hot. You need AC to survive and think. But the winters are extraordinarily pleasant. The temperatures get down to maybe 50s, 60s. You need a light jacket. It's warm enough that you can actually swim in the ocean year round. So that's really beautiful. And then the area that my parents do a lot of their work, Zululand, which is just a little bit, maybe 40 or 50 miles north, is beautiful grasslands that kind of lead up into the Drakensberg Mountains, which is a little mountain range they have up there. It gets a little bit chillier there, but still it doesn't really snow or anything like that.
It sounds lovely, and if I were a short-term missionary, kind of a nice place to come. Perhaps not in the summer, but there must have been missionaries, short-term missionaries, groups of people that visited you and your family there. What memories do you have of that?
Oh yeah, certainly. There were, that I can recall, when I was there, a couple different groups that came to help out, and I guess I have a very positive memory of them all coming over, because I think for the first group, my brother and I were maybe I was maybe 12, my brother was 10. And it was just really neat to see these people because, they were all just wonderful, believers, brothers and sisters in Christ. And, though they were only there for a short time, they were really committed to helping out my parents' mission in any way they could. And that was, I guess, for me, is such an encouragement, because when you're living in a foreign country, there's no other Americans, no one else speaks like you. It's actually really nice to have some people, from your home country come on out just to hang out with you. You can talk about the culture, you can make jokes that they understand better and vice versa. But also just to see them doing the work, because there's so many things that can be done that, yeah, my parents are doctors, but the work they're doing, doesn't really require doctors to do it. Yes, if doctors want to come over, that's great, but really anyone can be trained. I was, as a 10th grader, trained to do health screening and able to be very helpful to them. And people can help with that. There's different kind of building projects that people have done. My dad had people helping him to build these chicken domes, which provide housing for chickens, which is just absolutely wonderful. And I think that also there's a lot of technical know-how that people on mission trips have that my parents don't have. I love my parents. They do a great job in all the things to do, and they're very creative with it. But the medical training doesn't teach you how to run a business, or these basic engineering things like building. How would you design a chicken dome? Things like that. And so that is something where the input and the expertise of others can be tremendously helpful. And I think another thing that's very valuable about short-term mission trips is that it gives people from the churches who come a real experience of what the mission is doing. And so there's only so much you can get from a newsletter, from videos, things like that. But when you come out and when you see the work that's being done, and you see hopefully the lives are being changed, that's really helpful for seeing a mission, seeing if this is a mission you want to get behind and support. And that's an extremely valuable part of mission trips as well.
I'm just remembering the first time that I remember seeing you or knowing you, and you were a young boy. I was at an American Baptist Women's Gathering on the west side of the state. It was either a spring or a fall statewide event, and your family was preparing to leave. And I imagine you were going around doing like a circuit of churches kind of thing, meeting people and building support as you were preparing to leave. But I can see you and your brother and your mom and dad in my mind at this very moment, standing on that platform with these American Baptist women gathered around you, laying hands on your family and praying over you before you left that year. And then our very good friend, Linda Marshall, who I had the great pleasure of singing under her direction for many, many years, made a short-term mission trip. As a matter of fact, it was a group of American Baptist women. And in that trip, she, I think, reconnected in a stronger way with your family, met you, learned you were planning to come to Ann Arbor. And so what a delight it was for you to end up in my home church in Ypsilanti for those first few years of your undergraduate studies, leading our praise team. So I know music is important in your life. And are you continuing to play? What are you doing musically?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked about that. So yeah, that was such a wonderful experience to be, coming back to the U.S. and getting to work with all the wonderful musicians at First Baptist of Ypsilanti. I think it was one cool thing about that was it was kind of a cross-cultural time for me coming back to the U.S. Because I had to make the bridge, going to South Africa and growing up there, but then also returning to the U.S. I didn't have a lot of friends at that time. And I was, kind of a South African coming back to the States. So it was so wonderful to be welcomed into your church and to get to play music there and have kind of a part-time job doing that. It was really incredible. I guess as far as, music in my life, yes, it's been such a wonderful thing to getting to know people better, to fitting in with people, I guess to understanding emotions and conveying with people, and, praising God is a wonderful thing to do with music too. I guess, in my last couple of years of medical school, things have gotten pretty busy, but I've still been playing a lot of guitar. I'm taking jazz guitar lessons in the music school at U of M actually, and been able to continue doing that now. I got a teacher and have hung on to them through medical school, which has been pretty great. And also have a band in Ann Arbor, and we play kind of around different co-ops and other events in Ann Arbor, which has been great. I do hope to get back into worship music eventually, but just with my schedule, so for the time being, haven't been able to do that. But, and I hate to say it, but I think residency probably won't be the time to start back with that. But maybe after residency, God willing, I'll be able to get back into playing with the worship team again, because that's just such a wonderful thing to do.
It is. It brings absolute joy to my life, for sure. What is it that you are you going to be a generalist? I didn't ask, what's your specialty in medicine going to be? I'm sorry, I didn't ask and probe a little more about that.
Oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, so I'm going into internal medicine, which is, my parents are family doctors. Internal medicine doctors focus on taking care of adult patients, either in the hospital or in the outpatient setting. But I guess different from family medicine, they don't see children, child patients. And so I guess for me, I'm, again, still kind of trying to figure out exactly what I'll end up in internal medicine. I think that there's a pretty good chance that I will stay general, because I really like the broadness of the cases. It's really in the hospital, if you're the general hospitalist, then you really, I think, have the most opportunity to be there with patients, caring for them, getting to know them, because you're coordinating all the subspecialists and all their difficult problems. And you can also choose how much you're going to rely on the consultant teams or not to help you out with figuring things out and making things best for people. On the other hand, being outpatient, getting to take care of people in the clinic really has benefits, and just in terms of having a job that's a little more conducive to a family, getting to go home at 5 o'clock and be there with your kids. And I think that would push me to that. So, and then I guess also I've always been interested in research, and I'm currently working in a research lab. Been interested in hematology, oncology as well. So I think if I was to subspecialize, that would probably be what I'd end up doing. Because getting to take care of very sick patients with cancer is a very important thing, and it's a hard thing, and it's a sad thing. But I think it's a place where you really get to see God at work too, when things go well, and even when they don't go well. You see that God's always there for people, always loving them, and just see the things that He can do for people in whatever sorts of struggles they're going through.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking. Even if we were to go back to the discussion about short-term missionaries visiting and so forth, where is it that we see God? Where do you see God? Well, you're choosing medicine. That is your mission field. And to witness what God does in the lives of the people through you, I'm super excited for your future, Mark. Is there anything you want to add today? Any other comments you might want to share with us?
I guess, also just be so thankful and for you and the people at First Baptist of Ypsilanti for kind of taking me in through my first couple of years of coming back to the U.S. You guys were just a really wonderful part of my sort of reentry process to being back in the U.S. and to doing, as well as things have gone for me in the U.S. has really been at least a big part because of you guys. And also for all the wonderful people who've been praying for me. Prayer has been just a really important part of my life, and I think it's been really helpful to making it through all of the challenges that I've been through. So really grateful for that. Really grateful to get to talk to you guys today, and I hope this is helpful for people.
Thank you so much, Mark. Best to you in the future.
All right, thank you guys. Also with you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you are interested in learning more about short-term mission and international ministries, you can find us at internationalministries.org.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bridges for Mission. We are so glad you found us. Till next time.
Bienvenue au Pont pour la Mission.
Welcome to Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenido al Puente a Misión.
欢迎，这是 Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenue na Pont pour Mission.
Dulo mubanasu da fakukaso ado dapa.
We are so glad you found us. I am Minister Nicole Cox, Associate to Short-Term Mission at International Ministries.
I am Reverend Sandra Dorsonville, Director of Short-Term Mission at International Ministries. We are the creative minds behind this podcast. In this second season, you will be invited to listen to new voices who are themselves passionate about God's mission and how we respond to God's call to be hands and feet of Christ, not only in our neighborhoods, but thousands of miles away from the comfort of what seems familiar. Several special assistants to the Short-Term Mission Office, skilled team leaders, will have conversations with guests living in the U.S. and abroad. We invite you to stay open to how their stories may intersect with your story. Let the movement of the Holy Spirit permeate your hearts.
You'll soon discover how God equips all of us for the task we are called to, and you will recognize that we don't do this discernment process alone. Let these God moments create beautiful bridges for ministry. We live in hope and love, which neither can be silenced nor ignored. Welcome to Bridges for Mission. We're glad you found us.
We are so glad you joined us. I'm Reverend Sandra Dorsonville, and I'm joined with Minister Nicole Cox, and we have the pleasure of having with us Reverend Dr. Cassandra Jones. She's an ordained minister. She's also an assistant professor at Rockbridge Theological Seminary, an assistant professor at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, and also at Shaw University Divinity School. Dr. Jones teaches courses in Christian education, cross-cultural development, and leadership. And she encourages her students to think creatively. You might find Dr. Jones at Charlotte International Airport because she is one of the chaplains. And finally, among all of her accolades, she has joined the team of special assistants to the Short-Term Mission Office at International Ministries. So welcome, Dr. Jones.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Minister Nicole Cox, and I'm also equally excited to be here and to talk to this lovely woman. But my first question for you is, what brought you to Gordon Conwell?
Well, I was at another seminary in Charlotte at the time, and I had been doing some weekend courses at Gordon Conwell in spiritual formation and some weekend lectures for educational ministry. And the dean contacted me one semester and said, we'd like to bring you on board to teach courses, to teach semester-long courses, if you would be interested. And I actually left a department head position to go there because I would be teaching 100% in my field, and I was a department head in an area that was like general education at the other school. And I really was excited about delving more into research and my passion and spending my time there. Also, the school is a hybrid school where it is focused for full-time working adults who are also trying to get their degrees, either their master's or their doctorates, in an area of ministry. And we teach some of the classes on campus, and a little over 50% of the classes are online. So with my life and my family living away, it freed me up to have more time to travel. I had more flexibility in my time, and just all the way around, I thought it would be a good fit for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. So along with that, so I was doing some research on you, and I saw that your undergrad is actually in music education, which is mine as well. I was a music ed major and then went into ministry. So it really caught my attention when I saw that for you. So I want to know about that little hidden gem in your past. Has that, come into play at like the most random times? Because I know for me, sometimes I'm doing something and then music pops up or something comes up and that degree like kicks in and like you're off and you're running. So has that ever happened to you with that little hidden gem in your past just makes itself known at random times?
I keep hearing the words hidden gem, hidden gem. Music was my life. In fact, if you can identify with a prayer or a crying out to God that you had in your life, and it was so significant that you remember the exact place where you were when you cried out to God about a certain situation, that when I say music was my life, it was my life. I have not just one degree, but I have 2 degrees in music, one from Spelman and one from SMU. And my voice, my main instrument was my voice. I played the piano and the violin, but at the time I went to Dallas to teach music education, so I was doing choral music. And Dallas is one of the worst places for people with bad chronic asthma. My pulmonologist pulled me aside and said, I really believe the singing that you're doing, and the teaching, you don't just sing, you teach when you sing. I mean, you teach, you sing when you teach, was getting so bad that he highly recommended that I pull away from that. And that sent me into a tailspin, because my prayer to God was, why would you give me this talent? Why would you take this away from me? And I kept telling God, this is all I know. This is all I know. You are taking my life away from me. And I saw that as being pulled away and never being able to use it again. And it was a very, very difficult thing for me to do. Not long after that, God called me into the ministry. And I knew I had to go to seminary. And the seminary world did not know me as a musician. And so when music started, when maybe if I was at church and they would say, oh, does somebody play the piano? And then I would get up and go to the piano and everybody would go, oh, you play? You sing? And it cracks me up, because there are some people that say, well, does she do anything else? That's what she does. And so it is now, it's in my life a lot. I'm in the orchestra at our church. I in the BWA, I'm actually working with worship things for the Baptist World Alliance, and so they know me that I sing and all. But in terms of my work and how I do my work in my professorship, I have a sense of creativity that I see other professors don't have. For example, I do not give midterms, quizzes, or exams. I do evaluate you by how you use what you have been taught. So my exams are they're the multiple choice or write an essay. No. I want to see you in, how you are going to use all of these principles, all of these facts and all of this history and all of this information that practitioners that I've connected you with. how are you going to use this in this situation? Okay, so, and I've had my all of my students say, you give the hardest tests ever, but they either know what I've taught or they don't.
Yep.
Because if you can't use it in ministry, you don't know it. And so I am creative in how I do in the classroom, and I'm also creative in how I work on the mission field when I get the opportunities. And then also my creativity has helped me when I plan a certain way to do whatever my assignment is on the mission field, and something happens and my location, my venue has changed from a room to under a tree, or from a sanctuary to a open field somewhere with no plugs, no electricity, no nothing, and I'm sitting on the floor and the people that I'm talking to are sitting on a rock. I can pull on my creative experience, my creative knowledge, and use what I have. Take that stick and write in the ground.
Yeah, I cannot express how much peace you are bringing me right now. Cassandra knows a little bit about this, but I was a music ed major, and when I was in college, I developed asthma. Right as I was graduating, I was in a car wreck and broke my sternum. So I have not picked up my instrument and played in 4 years, which breaks my heart, because for 13 years, that was my life. I started in 6th grade. That was what I did, marching band, the whole 9 yards, everything. You know, I was an instrumental, so I was a flute player. I learned to play saxophone. I learned to play the drums, the whole thing. Like, that was my life. And then after my car wreck, you know, I kind of, before the wreck, I'd felt the call to ministry, but I was like, no, like music, music is my thing. And then after the car wreck, I couldn't play. Like, I was still healing. I couldn't hold my flute up. I couldn't conduct. I couldn't do anything. And it but then afterwards, he put Palmer in front of me and he said, no, here is your seminary. Like, this is where I want you to go. This is what I'm calling you into. And the way that you talk about using your music as a tool for the creating in the classroom, I completely understand, because it's so funny. I'm at church and the people at church are like, you're so creative when you're talking to the kids, but I'm not one of those to like test them and be like, do you know this? It's like, no, like, how do you express it? Like, exactly the same way you were talking about how they're learning it, but then using it. Like, how are they doing it that way? Like, last night I had them answer questions, but then I was like, okay, do a cartoon, do a play, write a song. How do you see these answers living out in your life? And like, it just, it's like, it's that trusting, God, through that process of, well, okay, well, he's quote unquote taking this away from you, but then putting you here. No, he's not, he's just using that and pulling you in a different direction. Like you said, you don't know where he's leading you, but that trust that, what he's done in the past and what you've gone through will be used, and it will not go away, even though it's changing and developing into something. How have you experienced that, as a woman, as a clergy leader, as an African American, like how has all of that experience played into your mission field?
Well, for me, it hasn't been, it's always been there, because it's, it's a part of you. It's always been there. I remember in the early 90s, I was asked by Dr. David Cornelius to take a group of young women, and they were high school and college young women, to Soweto, South Africa, to a church there, and to do some youth ministry. The Pastor Padule, was asking for a team to come and, to connect with their young people that were really experiencing a lot of angst, a lot of anger. He noticed a lot of opposition with the youth and their parents, in the congregation. There was a lot of not being interested in school, not being, and their parents were the generation that said, you are living in a totally different South Africa, and we want the best for you. That you have opportunities that we don't have, and so during our training, we were getting all of this information and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this? So we ended up guiding them through a production, a dramatic musical production where they wrote the script based on their lives, and they wrote their songs. They did the dances, and we just guided them through. Now, what happened was we didn't know that there were young people in that group that weren't Christians. They went to the church with their friends, and we weren't given that information. At the end of the entire, we were there for 2 weeks, and we were, helping them. We were helping them make their props. We were helping them do all this. But we said, this is tell your story. And you're telling your story to your parents. You're telling your story to your congregation. You're telling your story to your community. That dramatic presentation was like a revival for the community. There was no sermon. Nobody preached, but they were listening to their daughters and their sons and their nieces and their nephews and their grandchildren. And the Holy Spirit took it from there. But then they were able we were able to show them how much they had in them. How much they had in them. They could not say about us when we left and got on the planes, this is what they gave us. They were saying, this is what they brought out in us.
That's beautiful.
God had already placed it in them. He just used us as a tool to just let it grow, just let it come out.
Yeah.
So that's one of the examples that I have. Thank you so much for having me. I really have enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for joining us today. If you are interested in learning more about short-term mission and international ministries, you can find us at internationalministries.org.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bridges for Mission. We are so glad you found us. Till next time.
Bienvenue au Pont pour la Mission.
Welcome to Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenido al Puente a Misión.
欢迎，这是 Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenue na Pont pour Mission.
Dulo mubanasu da fakukaso ado dapa.
We are so glad you found us. I am Minister Nicole Cox, Associate to Short-Term Mission at International Ministries.
I am Reverend Sandra Dorsonville, Director of Short-Term Mission at International Ministries. We are the creative minds behind this podcast. In this second season, you will be invited to listen to new voices who are themselves passionate about God's mission and how we respond to God's call to be hands and feet of Christ, not only in our neighborhoods, but thousands of miles away from the comfort of what seems familiar. Several special assistants to the Short-Term Mission Office, skilled team leaders, will have conversations with guests living in the U.S. and abroad. We invite you to stay open to how their stories may intersect with your story. Let the movement of the Holy Spirit permeate your hearts.
You'll soon discover how God equips all of us for the task we are called to, and you will recognize that we don't do this discernment process alone. Let these God moments create beautiful bridges for ministry. We live in hope and love, which neither can be silenced nor ignored. Welcome to Bridges for Mission. We're glad you found us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bridges for Mission. My name is James Williams. I'm pastor at the First Baptist Church of Philadelphia. I'm also honored to serve as a special assistant to International Ministries Short-Term Mission Department for the Philadelphia region and beyond. It's a delight to be with all of you again, and boy, I have to tell you, we have a treat for you today. We have joining us all the way from Manila, Dr. Paul Rowlett. Paul is a global servant serving in the Philippines with an organization called Companion with the Poor. They're an amazing church planting organization and also a community unto themselves. We have a lot to learn from Paul and CWTP and his ministry in the Philippines. So Paul, I'll let you introduce yourself. What are you up to these days, and how did God bring you to where you are?
Yeah, so right now I'm here in Manila, in the Philippines, actually Quezon City, for people who know Metro Manila. And yeah, I've been here this year during the international lockdown. I think the Philippines had the longest lockdown. We're still in some form of modified quarantine here in the Philippines. So yeah, so I'm here in the Philippines. I am currently helping with some new missionary training with our group that I work with, Companion with the Poor. So we have 16 Filipinos who are going through new missionary training. And I'm also helping with a church planting team in one of our urban poor communities here in Manila. So in the group I work with, we have 13 teams around Metro Manila and Cebu. And I'm assigned to one of those teams in addition to helping with the missionary training. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing. Maybe we can talk more about, where I come from and more about me too. But
Yeah, and I would like to ask you about that. So, Paul, if I recall, you used to do a lot of work back in the States. Was it in Chicago? You were working with the homeless community in Chicago?
Yep, yeah, that's right, in Chicago.
So you've been, you're relatively young, Paul, but you've been doing the ministry, this work for quite some time. How did you get started, and how did you first hear your call to international missions?
Yeah, so it's been a process and a journey. I think that's one word that comes up a lot in conversations about mission. But yeah, it's really been a journey. So I grew up in a small town in Illinois, central Illinois, and but from as a young child, youth, I was very involved in the local church, and my parents and grandparents were very involved in mission globally, more on the short-term mission. But that's really how I began to learn about mission globally through missionaries coming through Central Illinois just to share their stories. But then also as a youth, a few opportunities to do some short-term trips, both within the U.S. and then also down into Central America. So So I think the seeds had been planted in my youth, all the way up through high school, and then it was really in college that I think things started moving a bit faster. So it was actually my sophomore year of college where I kind of call it my Abraham moment in life, where the Lord sort of just got my attention. And, I had already had the desire for ministry, I had a heart for mission, but it was my sophomore year of college where I was at a Christian college, the US, actually in Michigan. And I sensed God really challenging me. Actually, my first call was when I was there at the Christian college to transfer colleges to I guess you could say more secular college in Chicago, but to really help with campus ministry. And it was funny because I remember at the time, asking my friends. It was one of these like, I think I heard from the Lord, but is this still something that happens? I mean, I grew up in a pretty conservative Baptist church, so we weren't really hearing from the Lord a lot. I mean, through Scripture and whatnot. But I remember asking my friends. I was like, if God told you to transfer colleges, would you do it? And then I realized like that question wasn't for my friends. It was really for me. I was just trying to get some encouragement. And so yeah, that was my first call. And when I made the decision to transfer to the college in Chicago, it was. I mean, yeah, I guess some would say, the rest is history, but that was 16 years ago. And it really was. I mean, I think I mentioned Abraham because, I think once I made that first step, obviously I had made many steps before that in terms of doing short-term mission, doing sports ministry through high school and other things through my local church. I'd even gotten involved with some Thanksgiving, you know, meals, serving meals over Thanksgiving through our city in Springfield, and even connecting some with a little bit with some homeless ministry up to that point. But that was the big step for me. And once I made that step, went to Chicago. Then I ended up being in Chicago for 6 years. Through that college that I was studying at, I also studied sociology. And through my studies in sociology, I got connected to a homeless shelter in Chicago, also a Christian high school in inner city Chicago. And so, yeah, that was kind of then the next step beyond the campus ministry was into urban ministry. And kind of been on that journey ever since for the last 16 years. So.
Wow. So how did you end up in the Philippines, Paul? I mean, you mentioned Central America, and if I recall, you had quite a passion for Central America for a while. How did the Philippines happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, yeah, I had taken a number of short-term trips to Central America, and then I actually had a chance, both in college and then in seminary, during my seminary years, to go to Africa twice, and then also to Europe a few times. But it was through a program. So how I got to the Philippines in the first place, and I think this is really important too, was after 6 years in Chicago, I kind of burned out a little bit. I didn't grow up in the city, and I think there was just a sense of just fatigue of having to live, I guess, in a lot of ways cross-culturally, having grown up in a small town, and I just kind of got burned out in the ministry there, and so I began to look for programs where I could learn, I could go deeper, I could learn more about how to, especially survive long-term doing urban ministry, and not just survive but thrive. So I found a program that was sending students. This was a master's program, and it ended up becoming a doctorate program for me. But sending students globally to live in urban poor communities, or sometimes they're called slums, around the world. And initially thought I was going to be going to Kenya, to Nairobi, to working in some of the slum communities there, but was actually then rerouted to Manila, because my advisor at the time thought that I'm a very communal person. I don't like making decisions on my own. I like it to be done in community, and I like working always in group community. And so my advisor knew that there was a real sense of that in Manila, and some of the leaders here just do a really great job at journeying together. And so yeah, I ended up coming to Manila. That was my first time in Asia. That was back in 2012. So it's another big step. But I've just loved every minute of it. Yeah. So.
What surprised me, Paul, is you talk about Chicago being not really a good fit for you. Manila is the population is around 22 million, which is more than Chicago, and it's the most densely populated city in the world. It's certainly a city, and it's so interesting that this is where you found home and God's calling on your life. And I have to say, I have been privileged to visit you in the Philippines and spend time with your ministry. And what struck me the most was the incarnational model of your ministry. Now, when I say incarnational, I want to make sure that you and I are on the same page. Is incarnational an appropriate word for your ministry? And if so, what does incarnational ministry look like to you, Paul?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it was definitely fun having you here for a while.
It was
both
fun
here in Manila. Yeah, it was fun. Manila, and then also in Iloilo.
Yeah.
I want to say first, you mentioned Chicago maybe not being a good fit. I don't think that was the case as much. I think it was more that I actually loved it in Chicago, and I still absolutely love Chicago. And I miss it a lot. I miss my friends there. I miss, I really miss that. But I would say more. It was sort of another season, a launching season into maybe where I am now, and I still feel connected to all of the cities that I've visited in the past, all of the other global servants, and I would say co-journeyers all over the world, the U.S., here in the Philippines, and that I've met. And I still try to pray regularly for those serving in different cities, and not just for those serving in those cities, but for the cities themselves and for what God is doing in those places. So, but yeah, I think the incarnational piece really started when I was in Chicago, and then it's carried through here. Actually, when I was helping at the homeless shelter in Chicago, there was a few weeks where I was the last person in, didn't want to take someone's bed, but I actually slept at the shelter with the men and women there. Sometimes it was on a old used hospital bed or a mattress on the floor, and had some interesting experiences there, but made some amazing friends, and co-journeyers there as well. But so when I got here to Manila, that was really part of the deal too, was to move in to live incarnationally with the families that we were serving with. And the neat thing here in Manila is that many of our staff with Companion with the Poor are missionaries, volunteers, are from the churches that we plant in the urban poor communities, and most of them still live there. And so when we come and begin just a journey with the companion community, and it's not all; it's maybe 70 or 80%. I think that's one of the best ways of really entering into what God is doing, is living with some of these families and really understanding their situation better. But you also get to see how each of these people are the light of Christ in their communities, and how the gospel has transformed their lives, and not just their lives, but then those of their family members, their neighbors. And sometimes you see whole communities just transformed because of the good news of the gospel. And so, yeah, for me, that's been really the best way to enter into mission. it has its challenges. You know, the first community I lived in here, we had regular flooding. We had one quite big flood that came through in 2000. It was 12 or 13, and you know, I lived on the second floor of our house for 2 or 3 days because the flood was all the way up almost to the second floor. You know, all the way up to the first floor, and you know, I think people who's lived in cities, sometimes it reminds me of camping, you know, because you get some of the same critters and things that you would get if you were out camping in the woods. Sometimes in the cities, but yeah, I think once you learn to cross that threshold, if you can find a place, you know, God is gracious with us, and so He's never pushed me beyond, you know, what I can handle. But sometimes He'll push me quite hard and throw me into something that's very new and take some adjustment and take some tears and some um, you know, toughening up. But when you can get through those times of discomfort and through those times of the challenges that face you, mostly because they're new. I mean, I think I've learned now they're not life-threatening challenges. It's just mostly discomfort. And once you can push past that discomfort, it allows you to see much more clearly what God is doing around you. It allows you to connect more quickly into what God is doing, particularly among the poor. And you know, as I've journeyed in ministry, I've realized that very few people. I have a mentor who says this too, but very few middle upper class people really know the poor, and mostly because they haven't been able to move beyond their comfort zones to journey with the poor, to live with the poor, to experience what that's like. And as I've been able to do that, my goodness, I mean, there are just so many joys and amazing things that you can learn